Welcome back to Seek Strength. Today's video is brought to you by our off-season stream of programs. This is a program with 2 blocks, 4 weeks per block, 4 sessions per block, and there is no Olympic lifting movements in this program, so it's perfect for any rugby player currently in your off-season. You're at the start of your off-season, you're trying to get in good shape before you go into your hardcore strength block. George Ladder, coach of an underage rugby club, I assume, is saying, if you're designing pre-season S&C testing for a rugby team, what tests would you use?
The great thing is we do design pre-season testing for rugby players. Pre-season is a bit strange, and like pre-season testing has an issue because pre-season you're putting a defined point in it, and pre-season testing would usually mean the end of our off-season training, which is a huge amount of strength and power work. And we'd have some morphological testing as well, like body weight, body size, if they've been going up in weight or dropping down weight. That testing will be happening at the end of our off-season, start of our pre-season. And then we also have the initiation of our kind of heavy aerobic block. So usually you take some sprint times to make sure we're not slowing them down with our aerobic work. We'd also take something like a Bronco test, or we might have something like an Illinois T test or a 10-10-20 test. And any of these things will get us a marker for speed, agility, and then we'll look for a marker of general aerobic fitness. But pre-season testing is strange because you're testing to finish off your last block, which was off-season, and then you're testing at the start of your pre-season, which you'll expect very low aerobic values, or classically you'd expect very low aerobic values. Obviously not from the Seeker rugby players, because their aerobic values are great.
I think if you had the luxury of dealing with the same team for a number of years, you could be a little bit more specific as well. So obviously with any of the rugby players Dara has, he would know the metrics they'd be looking for. So you'd be saying at the start of your pre-season, or your off-season, I should say. So at the start of your off-season, you'd be like, okay, we need to lose maybe 10 kilos, or we need to gain 5 kilos in appreciable mass. You know, you'd have the luxury of saying, all right, Dara, did you, at the start of this off-season, we said we were going to improve your aerobic capacity and we were going to drop 3 kilos, I think, as much as reasonably possible. That would be some very useful stuff as well. Like, so being really specific with each of the players, if you had the luxury of having those players and knowing them before. So obviously it might be a particular environment, so you couldn't always guarantee that kind of individual interaction, but that'd be very useful, you know, if you came into the off season with specific goals for each one of the players, and then you'd finish the off season before the preseason. You'd look at, did they hit those goals and metrics that the backs coach or the head coach or whoever said to you that they need to hit. You know, if they gave you specific things they need to work on, and did you feel like you improved on those things, you know, and you can test those specific things. So, you know, you mightn't, everyone should probably do the full gambit of testing that you're doing anyway, but then to improve that individual player, I think would be very beneficial as well. So you'd hope that player would be doing it individually by himself, but as their S&C coach, you should be there to support them as much as possible in that regard. So you'd be looking at, you know, did you gain that 20 kilos, or did you gain that 10 kilos that you needed, you know, now that you're 3 inches taller, because you went from 17 to 18 over the course of the summer, and you invariably grew an inch or something over the course of 3 months, you know, and your coach had the eye for that, and he said you needed 10 more kilos or whatever. You know, that kind of pre-season testing would be very valuable as well, I think.
I think one thing I'd like to see, if I could wave a magic strength and conditioning wand today, one thing I would like to see is there being less of a drop off in people's actual aerobic condition between in-season and off-season, because most of the time, people lose so much of the work they put in the off-season. Like, they'll train their ass off for 8 or 10 weeks,
and then
stronger, faster, more powerful. They're like great condition, and then they have to go for 6 weeks of running because they're not fit enough to move around the pitch. Like, everybody we have for off-season work, they'll tell you the amount of running volume they do. Like, we just had an AFL player going back 3 or 4 weeks ago to do testing with his team at the start of a season, and he got the number 1 beep test out of everyone else, and his off-season was only weightlifting. Like, weightlifting with an appropriate amount of aerobic work will get you a huge amount, or maintain a huge amount of your aerobic conditioning. People lose years of their lives accumulatively with the amount of training time they miss out on, because they go to an off-season block, they're like, fuck it, I'm gonna get huge.
Mm-hmm.
And then they'll gain 15 kilos. They'll have to drop 7 kilos of it within 6 weeks. And then they're going back in a kind of semi-shite place. Like, you want to be bigger, but you need to make sure you're not so big that you're going to have to lose weight in your preseason.
I'd say the drop off in aerobic capacity over the off season is synonymous with non-professional rugby the world over.
Absolutely, yeah.
I think every single team and club, the vast majority, bar one or two dedicated players, will lose a huge amount of aerobic, if not all of their aerobic conditioning, because it's not their full-time job. Some of them might be like semi-pro. They've other priorities, and there's different levels of dedication across the team. And they go in and play their season, and when they finish the season, they're like, well, fuck rugby now anyway. I'm fucking sick of running. And then there's that psychological dread when you come back in for those first 6 weeks where the coach is like, fuck, everyone's out of shape.
Yeah.
And the coach will know that's what's coming. And it's like, right, it's literally just running tonight. And in some ways, you can't blame the coach for that behavior.
They have to do it. Like, they have to. Like, there's no other choice.
And there's nothing to replace that kind of sport-specific activity, you know, that running and stuff, especially if they let their conditioning drop off a lot. You know, you can lose you don't have to be in match shape all the time and that have massive levels of aerobic capacity, but you should still be able to keep like 80% of it fairly intelligently with your training. And then you can come back in season and then just brush off the cobwebs a little bit for that in-season conditioning, and then get back to like running specific stuff. You know, it's like it's so synonymous with amateur field sports. Is people come back into season in terrible shape,
and they'll have done the right thing in off season. You've gotten bigger and stronger, but it means nothing if you have to immediately reverse it. Like, we just had a player get a pro contract last week who trained with us for 18 months, you know, like really good work, really diligent working the whole way through.
Oh, one of the best athletes we ever had. It's
phenomenal. So, like, this stuff does work. People think it's like going to be, I'm not going to get the same results because I'll still have to do some running and some aerobic work during the summer, you know. It's like, no, you have to sit on a bike once or twice a week and you have to do a tiny bit of work on the pitch, and that's it.